So I've just been on a bit of a mission to get to this place. And I only really recently sort of worked out earlier on this year that I was already there. And that was able to help me, reduce some of the stress levels as per, pushing so hard. It wasn't actually needed. So it was a bit of a mindset shift with, choosing to do something rather than having or needing to.
This is Property Investory, where we talk to successful property investors to find out more about their stories, mindset, and strategies. I'm Taran Sham, and in this episode on Property Investory, we're chatting with Sasha Hopkins of the A-Team Property Group, who will share his journey to find his safe haven and how the desire to create a business with access to professionals that aid in wealth creation spawned the name of his flourishing company.
Full name is Sasha Hopkins, and I'm the CEO and director of the A-Team Property Group. So that is the main company that we help educate clients to create a tailored investment strategy and then manage that entire process for them. There are a couple of other sister companies as well that helps with providing these sort of results, being in finance and property development. But the main company that helps people is the A-Team.
The inspiration for the name of Hopkins' business was drawn from his own frustrations in sourcing professional help in property.
It happened when I was actually on a holiday in Bali, literally driving around in the backseat of a minibus, and I was trying to get finance for a townhouse development that I was attempting at the time, and it literally had been probably about 2.5 months of waiting, and my broker coming up with all these different excuses, and then pretty much the last straw, and I get an email and basically said that he was unable to actually to get me finance for this deal. And later I found out that he hadn't actually submitted it, and we won't go into that. But so that sort of stemmed some frustration because, look, I was working in the industry at the time as a property investment advisor, and I sort of thought, well, here I am working in the industry, trying to achieve, my own goals and results, and I can't even get the results or get the outcomes that I'm wanting or needing, and I work in this space. So imagine what it would be like for you everyday type of Australian that doesn't really have the background or the experience trying to buy a home, get finance, invest in property. It's no wonder there's so many unfortunate, horror stories, or people get turned off and don't ever want to continue. So I thought, well, it'd be great if there was just this centralized place or this team of people that you could just go to get, great results in, whether it's wealth, finance, investing, whatever it might be, just have one main place or team. And then I thought, well, yeah, you really need an A-team of professionals to help you. And then that name stuck, and here we are today.
So what does he do in any given day?
Generally wake up at 5, just before 5:30. Get up, go to the gym. I'm a morning person, so love to get a good workout in to start the day well. And then I'll come home, and generally my wife and daughter will be just getting up. And I've got a little 15-month-old girl. Her name's Winter.
Congrats.
So thanks a lot. I like to get in a little bit of time with them in the morning. Have breakfast. Feed her breakfast, the daughter, not the wife, that is, and then sometimes my wife will take the dog to the park, and I'll have a little bit of time with Winter, and then get ready for the day, and generally get to the office between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, and then I've got a team here of around sort of 10 to 12 people floating in and out. And our goal really each day is to change as many lives as we can, meaning, help as many people either start or continue their wealth creation journey using property as that vehicle.
Growing up in northern New South Wales and then completing his secondary education in Queensland, Hopkins' first job made him realise that he needed some direction in his life.
Before I hit the teen years, I actually grew up about 20 minutes outside of a place called Nimbin. I don't know if you know where Nimbin is, but it's the marijuana capital of Australia. I actually was raised as a little bit of a hippie, and now I'm as opposite as you can be, living the city life. But we then moved up to Noosa to sort of start fresh up there. Was there for around about 5 or 6 years or so. And look, unfortunately, the parents split up when I was around 16, and that sent me into a little bit of a downward spiral. And that resulted in me getting expelled from school. And then so I decided, well, I tried to go to a new school to finish year 12, but school just wasn't for me anymore. So I started working, and the first sort of full-time job I got was literally in a nursery, potting plants all day long. I did that for about 5 months, and then one day, after my 150th plant potted for the day, I sort of took the first moment in my life, took a step, looked up and just thought, where the hell am I actually going with my life? Like, this is a joke. I'm not in school. I don't have anything. I don't have any sort of passions at all. Is this really all that I am? And then, that really sort of sparked my first sort of light bulb moment. And I realized, quickly that I needed to change my environment because, continuing down that path was not going to get me anywhere. And I knew that I had more to offer. So I made the decision at 17 to leave the family up there. So I left home at 17 and decided that I just wanted to finish school, but I needed a new fresh start. So I moved to Melbourne and finished school in 2006. It was to be for a trial year, but I'm still here some 11 odd years later. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do after school. I didn't see the point in going to uni, if I didn't really enjoy or if I wasn't passionate about something. So I just started working. And one thing you learn pretty quickly on in life is that when you leave home at an early age, or really any age, but certainly as a 17-year-old, you need money pretty quickly. So that was one lesson that I learned very early on, is that, look, if I want to do anything, I need to get money. So that was the reason I started to work. And then, I thought, well, I knew that I like the concept of money. I know that it could help me, do things that I wanted to and live a good life. And look, my family were certainly the opposite of wealthy. Definitely not from the wealthy side at all. And that was always a bit of a challenge. So look, I thought, all right, well, I'm going to start working. I've been always good at saving. I've been working from quite an early on age.
Then he experienced his first foray into investing before discovering the book that would form part of the inspiration to take action and divert into property.
When I turned 18, I started investing in shares a little bit, and they went well. Then the GFC came along and dropped, and then bounced back up again after that a little bit. And I was working for a couple of years and started to learn a bit more about money. And, I was fascinated by it because I knew that if I could understand it, then I could probably do more things in life that I wanted. And so that sort of began the learning curve of reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and coming across the property market after that sort of not so good experience with the share market. And similar sort of time to that, I met a girl called Lana, who is my wife now, and we've been together for nearly 10 years. But I met a girl, and that was sort of my next motivation or light bulb moment about, all right, well, if I want to look after this girl, I knew that she was the one. I don't have any qualifications behind me, so I need to start getting street smart. And that's sort of what triggered that sort of big learning phase of money, of investing, and leading me onto property. And then I bit the bullet after my 21st and bought my first property. Had no idea what I was doing. Took advice from the first person I ever spoke to, who happened to live on the same street as I bought the property. So you can imagine it's fairly biased. And that's how I started the property journey.
Other jobs Hopkins attempted before entering into property investing included retail and landscaping.
I quit the nursery, proudly quit the nursery just before I moved to Melbourne at the beginning of '06, and then finished year 12, and then I just went out into doing random jobs, whether it was doing some landscaping, there was a little bit of retail. I may have been the doorman for Supre for a few months, the female shop, if you know what that is. But that was mainly just to meet girls, of course. And a whole bunch of random things. And then I sort of started to work for Telstra. And that's kind of where, at the same sort of time as when I started getting into property, and that was sort of the first proper job with a bit of commission. I was really good at sales. And then I sort of worked my way up through Telstra, went into Telstra Business, and was in Telstra for a good few years, and was quite successful in that role. And that's kind of and I was in Telstra for about 3 or 4 years before I became a property investment advisor or a consultant.
This new advisor role was brought on when Telstra acknowledged his passion for real estate and decided to combine that with his sales skill set.
That I was brought across to a company. My passion for property, I was sort of on my fourth property by 22, I think, or 22 or 23, one of the two, at that point in time. And I'd worked with these people who owned the company for quite a few years, and I was very good at that job when I was working for them, and they brought me across to their property company at that point in time. And that's sort of where, again, it sparked the next big growth phase of property and working in it, day in, day out with more experienced people than me. It was a great learning and growth phase to then start mentoring, Australians one-on-one to help them, start or continue building a portfolio. It was definitely it was the dream job that was landed.
With an ever-expanding portfolio of around 25 properties, Hopkins has also invested in a number of development sites.
I've gone really crazy this year, I will say. I've bought 4 development sites. I just literally got an offer accepted on one yesterday. 4 development sites this year alone, with on completion value, going through the plans and the DA process and starting construction on some of those. On completion value, I think it's either in this year alone 10 or 11 million worth of property, which is definitely been my best year to date. So in terms of the entire portfolio, look, with these recent purchases, once they're complete, I'd be looking at probably 13, maybe 14 million.
So ultimately, what is his vision for his portfolio?
Besides property investment and now business being another passion, I do have a great, love for educating people and also inspiring people to take action. I guess that was one of the other reasons why I started the A team, is because, I helped a lot of people in the other job, and I wanted to keep doing that, but just teaching what I had done to replace my income by age 26. And my goal really is to become the number one property investment company in Australia based on, client results, based on their experience, based on, the sophistication of the investment strategies. That's my goal, is to be number one in the industry and be able to, I'd love to create 1,000 people that can become financially independent through our strategies and the 3-step formula that we teach. So that's, I guess, my purpose. It's certainly been a good start so far.
There have been several pressure points in Hopkins' experience in property, whether it be finance or lack of income, which have also been challenging to overcome.
Finance always, forever seems to be an extremely frustrating and overcomplicating process. we're a lot of the time we're at mercy to the banks, and it's easy. I mean, even with the amount, not including the day-to-day client investments and finances that we obviously do and manage, but even personally, I still get very frustrated with banks. Whether that's the lowest point, I'm not too sure, but that's something, that any serious property investor, I'm sure, would be able to relate to, the inconsistency and just, strange actions of banks a lot of the time, without any rationale. Lowest point, lowest point for me is if I haven't been able to actually do something or, acquire a property because of, finance or the banks, or, for example, couldn't get finance because of, being recently self-employed or something like that. And I knew that was going to set me back. It could be, a year or something like that. That for me, I've been on a little bit of a race to get to what I call my safe haven. And that's sort of, I guess, a place where I know that, moving forward, no matter what happens, myself, my family, my parents, my sister, my wife's family are just going to be always protected. And no matter what happens, they'll be fine, they'll be safe. So I've just been on a bit of a mission to get to this place. And I only really recently sort of worked out earlier on this year that I was already there. And that was able to help me, reduce some of the stress levels as per, pushing so hard. It wasn't actually needed. So it was a bit of a mindset shift with, choosing to do something rather than having or needing to.
A particular investing moment which took a turn for the worst was when he lost a significant sum of money on a deposit for a property. One
stressful part was once when I bought a mortgagee possession property, which was a triplex development. The solicitor wasn't able to. They didn't pick up a particular council constraint in the contract, and I'd already gone unconditional on the property, and I had to pull out because of this particular condition that wasn't picked up on, and that actually had my $75,000 deposit at complete risk of being lost. That was highly stressful, and I engaged a professional to help me out. And of course, people point blame in many directions away from themselves. I did manage to get back $60,000 of the 75, but it still cost me about $15,000 for that experience. That was definitely a stressful part. One of the lowest, you could say.
The lesson to be learned? To have the right team behind you to ensure these things are well managed, which is what the A team is able to do in helping people with their own property dilemmas.
Now, the people that we work with, I've been very, very strict on those people and who are on our A team to ensure things like that don't get missed. I understand people can make mistakes, but when it's at the cost of your own hard-earned dollars, it doesn't matter, how good they are. It's still going to be bloody stressful.
There have been several moments throughout Hopkins' journey where everything seemed to click, like when he felt motivated to begin investing to provide for his family.
So the first one was that moment that I looked up and realised that there was more to me than what I was doing. And that was the first time I probably felt empowered to do something. The next one was, when I met the girl of my dreams, I knew that she was the one. For me to be able to give her and my future family what I wanted to in the life, that without the financial limitations that I had, that was probably the next one as the driver to start really getting serious around sort of just after I turned 20. And then the next one after that was when I sort of, working for the old employer, realised that there was an incident where I felt really undervalued and put in a lot of effort to help them grow a very successful business, and wasn't valued. And then I coincidentally went away on my holiday the next week, and then that's sort of when the idea of the A team came about. Always happens like that, of course. And that was brought on by reading Robert Kiyosaki's Cash Flow Quadrant. So they've been probably the two most powerful books I've read, being that one and Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Another important aha moment was realizing that he actually reached his original goal, his safe haven.
And then the fourth one was, as I said, only a few months ago. I sort of, a lot of my motivation to get to where I got to, was, I suppose, based on a little bit of, I guess, fear. What I mean by that is, fear of not getting to this place, or fearing having to get to this place before I'm allowed to kind of relax and smell the roses. And, I guess even though I've done very well and I'm fairly modest, to be honest with you, but I haven't really allowed myself to feel a sense of achievement for a lot of the stuff that I've done. And that was because I knew that I wasn't at this place yet. I knew that I had to keep going to be able to get to this place. And when I went away with Lana, my wife, and my little daughter to Europe in August, I was when I go on holidays, I was thinking all this stuff, and then sort of had some unanswered sort of questions. Something was a bit unsettling, and then I sort of, when I got back the day before I was to come back to work on the Monday, I sort of went through this. Literally took about 4 hours, between 11 to 4 a.m. in the morning of working out that I was actually at this. Firstly, what does that safe haven that I talk about? What actually is that? What is that exact lifestyle that I want to live? How much would it cost? And then where am I at based on my current situation? And then it took 4 hours to work out that I was already there. And then I woke up the next morning feeling really enlightened and I guess a lot lighter. And I realised, me going, because work can sometimes be bloody stressful. I will say, starting a business isn't easy. And then when I sort of went to work that day, I sort of thought, well, I don't actually need to feel these ongoing stresses or the panic that I sometimes get. Something could impact, my future safe haven as such. I can actually choose to go to work. I don't have to go to work, and that's a big difference. And that's probably the biggest mindset shift that I've had in many years is being able to distinguish the difference between choosing to do what I do rather than having to, I guess. And that helps me motivates me more to want to inspire other people to take the action to get to that same level or that same place.
But first, was there anything holding him back from initially investing in property?
One thing that I'll happily admit is that I don't seem to have really much a sense of fear at all of taking risks. And one thing I'm really good at, even though, I don't have any doctorates and, bachelors and all that sort of stuff. I have nothing really besides a real estate license. But one thing that I've been always really good at is taking a lot of action. So no, I wouldn't say there was anything holding me back on the first one. Probably just not really knowing. But I was just keen to get into the market and get started. So,
however, Hopkins does recognise the difficulty of getting past a negative mindset in order to move forward, with many people who are in the position to do something but are held back from fear.
It's still, the biggest sort of challenge that we have day to day doing what we do here is, look, people are scared. They're scared because they don't want to lose their money. They might have had a bad experience. Their parents might have had a really, really tough experience. Growing up, they might not have had any money, and they've sort of been ingrained a particular, way of thinking towards money, and they might not want their parents or to go through what their parents did. So there's all these sort of, it always stems from something, from something that's been younger or the way that they've been educated. And, people are serial procrastinators these days. And, unfortunately, it's a bit harsh, but, if people don't take a step or take action towards a better place or a better life that they want to live, there's just no bloody way that they're going to be able to do it. And that's just really as simple as it is. So, I guess, it could be emotions, fears, it could be, negative influences. There's so many things that stop people from doing something. And, I see people, I've probably consulted to 2,500 plus people now in Australia. And, I've seen people in fantastic positions, far better than I ever was when I was starting out or, coming up through for my portfolio, and they don't do anything because of fear, and it's really sad. But sometimes I have to tell people what do you think is actually more scary? You buying this property and then building it and getting it tenanted out and then realizing it's not for you, or continuing down this path of doing nothing and then ending up like 87% of Australians that retire on less than 30 grand a year as a couple. What's more scary? And you have to give them an ultimatum, and that's how life is.
In order to overcome their fears, he says before turning to sources of practical information, it's important to want it enough to follow through with it.
To begin with, it has to come from themselves. Nothing resonates with people. Information won't register unless the motivation comes from themselves. Me telling you to do something, yeah, you hear it, yeah, you probably know, but unless you feel it or you have a life experience that sort of causes you to have a learning about it, it's never going to work. So people need to, I guess, learn or work out themselves. All right, I need to do this, for myself and my future. And people have to, and it really comes down to, starting with the end in mind and reverse engineering, where people want to get to. I mean, one of the things that we take people through is, working out exactly where people want to be and what actually that looks like, on a daily basis, the exact day, the type of lifestyle they want to live, understanding, what people aren't happy with in their life financially, what's been stopping them from becoming financially free so far. And then it's understanding what those, maybe habits that need to be changed, or, new routines that need to be conditioned. And then, people need a bit of accountability. They need to believe that they can do it themselves. They need to want to do it themselves by having a vision of where they want to be, and having the motivation behind them, e.g., for family and, being able to have choice and freedom and all that sort of stuff. And people just need a bit of love. They need someone to help hold their hand to be able to lead them, down a path that's proven, so that they don't, that minimise, the chance of people making mistakes and having a bad experience. You only need 10 years, in property, and you're set for life.
Some books which have helped him through his property investing journey include classics by Robert Kiyosaki, Steve McKnight, and Tim Ferriss.
There's pretty limited books, in my opinion, in Australia, property books, that in my opinion they're either relevant or, the first property book, realistically, everyone has to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That's just a non-negotiable. That's honestly probably the best book, and then the second one being Cash Flow Quadrant. They're probably their best books, and that's about money and the relationship with money, and and investing in the concepts of of not conforming to the typical 9 to 5 and end up with nothing. So they're non-negotiables in my opinion. Property books that I've read, the first book that I read at the beginning was Steve McKnight's book. 0 to 130 properties or something like that in 7 years. Now I think that one's possibly a little bit outdated now, or the same practices I don't think work exactly the way that is. But look, that helped, definitely. But even though I didn't follow that same kind of method, what else have I read that's property related? I read Cam's book, My 4-Year-Old. What else? There hasn't been too many property books. A lot more of them have been around, mindset and then, I guess when I've been moving into business, seeing that I've sort of got property under my belt now, there's been a lot more sort of recent business books or mindset books. So, it just so happens that property is the vehicle that's got me to where I am. Business is my other passion now that, I'm in my learning phase and mastering phase. Still got a lot to go, of course, but, some other books, what have I read? So, there is My 4-Hour Work Week. That's a really good book. That's by Tim Ferriss. That's Then we've got, some books by Grant Cardone and Gary Vee, and, some old classics like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That's a great one. That's a classic. And then there's some other kind of businessy type ones and sales ones. And, one that I'm reading right now is called The One Thing. And that is basically, pretty much talking about that everyone these days is addicted to being busy and addicted to multitasking, myself included. But the reality is that, being busy isn't actually necessarily an effective way of being, because people don't really complete tasks. They focus on being busy rather than focusing on completion of tasks, whether that's, in your job, whether that's at home with, family, whatever it is. People are playing below the line, being, busy and not actually doing a whole lot, versus playing above the line where people just focus on completing the most important things. What's the one most important thing right now that's going to, progress me closer to my bigger goal? And that's kind of, I guess, a lot of that to do with mindset and productivity. So they're all relevant.
A strong personal habit, which have contributed to Hopkins' success, sets him up for the entire year and allows him to drastically improve in all areas of his life where necessary.
I don't know how it worked, how I made it up or when it happened. I've been doing it for many years now. But every single, we're coming up to that time of the year, so every single New Year's, New Year's Eve, I don't really go out or, go to a party or anything like that. Not that I don't enjoy doing those sort of things, but for me, it is imperative that I wake up on New Year's morning with a nice, the clearest conscience, the clearest mindset, the clearest outlook. I don't want to have a diluted outlook or a hangover, because for me, and look, this might be part of, my old habits that I'm trying to improve and change, but I don't want to start the year. I want to start the year, being totally focused. And so one sort of routine that I go through, it honestly spans over 2 or 3 days. And New Year's Eve, I sort of I write up a list and review of all my achievements for that particular year. And I'm I write down everything that I'm proud of and everything that I've done that year, and I might reflect back to what my previous goals that I set at the beginning a year ago for that particular year, and what I've done and what's been exceeded. And I sort of like last year I did a Facebook Live about it, and everybody, it was really good because a lot of people also took the time to be proud of what they had achieved that year. But then probably the most important thing is then the next 2 days, generally the first and the second, in amongst relaxing, of course. But I break down my life into 6 pillars. So 1 is business and or occupation, 2, financial and wealth, 3, mental and emotional, 4, health and fitness, 5, relationships and family, and 6, fun and rewards. So I break it down like that because to me they're the most important things in my life in terms of how the different sections of my life. And what I do is I then set goals out for every single one of those 6 pillars of what I want to achieve out of that. And I literally write my plan for that for the next year to come, being 2018. I write out everything I want to achieve in business, the A-team, the property development company, the finance business, any new ventures that I'm, wanting to release, in the year to come. So I really break down, everything you can possibly imagine about planning. Then I do the same for my own personal and wealth. I'll always review the previous year, look at how much I'd smashed those original goals. And I do that throughout every single pillar. For fun and rewards, how much have I been, staying true to rewarding myself and smelling the roses? Do I want to be doing even more of that for the year to come? Can I do more of that now? Relationships, all that sort of stuff. I do that. It's a very intense and mind-consuming process, but without a word of a lie, without any doubt, I have exceeded every single goal that I've set myself every year for probably the last 5 or 6 years by doing this process.
That's phenomenal.
So it's for me, it's very powerful, and I'm certain it would work for other people. But you have to be really, you really have to commit the time to be able to do it, and then really think about what it is that you want from the year to come. Because life passes by very, very fast, and if you're not living up to your potential, and if you don't know where you're wanting to get to, then people are just treading water and getting nowhere.
Setting and then committing to your goals may mean reviewing them throughout the year to stay on track. However, often he smashes them earlier.
I would review the plan probably in the first couple of months a lot more frequently than as the year goes on. I might touch on it every quarter or so. But look, to be honest, I haven't looked at that plan now for, I'd say, it's probably 6 months, because I already know in my mind that I've already beaten it, by mid-year. And now I'm just seeing what will happen, and then I want to get a nice little surprise as to, all right, well, here's what I set. Where am I at? How many areas have I exceeded it? Yeah, there'll always be a few that might not have got there, but look, that's how life is, or business, or whatever. Things come up. But now that when I know that I'm on the right track and kicking goals, it's more just about then reflecting on how much I exceeded that then at the end of the year.
To create his own portfolio and to aid his clients in attaining wealth through property, he has created the Hopkins formula. This allows them to smash these goals within 5 to 10 years of investing via a series of phases.
So the number one rule for me that I learned very early on is that I can't do it myself. I can't do it on my own. So I've honestly paid, excluding the business sort of any coaching and stuff like that, I've probably spent $80,000 on property education and other property services to help me in those first few years. Now, my exact strategy is such, and which is now what we refer to as the Hopkins formula that we teach our clients, which is a 3-step formula named after myself, of course. Now, the 3-step formula is what I did to replace my income in the first 5 years. What it involves is starting out by laying foundational properties in your portfolio. So what a foundation property is, so we do every part of our strategies includes some sort of element of construction, because we like to add value to a piece of land by constructing on it. And when we're timing the right market, we always have growth or instant equity on the completion, of those construction projects or those houses. Some as much as $150,000 from when the client first signs the contract. That aside, though, I've worked out, or what I did is I put 3 of those foundational properties into phase 1 of the portfolio. You only need 3. It was actually 4. Sorry, no, 4. But you only need 3 in your portfolio. Let's say worth $500,000. Your typical good long-term growth house in a capital city. That's going to always have constant demand, population growth, and will increase in value. Now, if you have 3 of those at $500K each, so $1.5 million, then if that only grows at 7% per year, or on an average, then you're making yourself over $100,000 of equity growth just in the first year, and no doubt that's going to compound each year. Okay, then we introduce phase 2, which is dual income or dual occupancy and duplex investment. So that's bringing some higher yielding properties. So dual occupancy being capital city based, high rental yield, and the same growth prospects as a house, or duplexes, being also capital cities and higher yield, or sometimes going a little bit further out of a city to be able to create a higher instant equity gain on the completion, but still with a higher yield. And the reason why we bring in those higher yielding properties is so that it balances out the cash flow of the portfolio. So if we've got, 4 or 5 of these very well positioned properties paying for themselves, the last two are increasing our serviceability, then that's kind of the set and forget. That's the foundation done. You're going to be creating anywhere between 100 to 200K of equity growth each year by doing nothing. All right. So that's done. Then though, and of course we might bring in, self-managed super fund strategies as well, whether it's a house or investing into development, which I'll cover next.
The next stage is development, which is set up in a particular way to manage individual aspects of the project.
Phase 3 is when stuff starts to get really exciting. And that's when we introduce property development, but we do it in a way that it's to become a business. So we run very, very, unique joint venture development projects or opportunities. So we partner with people to project manage small development projects that we do everything from putting together the joint venture to sourcing the site, the finance, the DD, the feasibilities, managing the DA process, the subdivision, the construction, the sales. So everything is all project managed. And the profits that are created from these projects in a 12 to 18 month period, we set it up in a way in which the client invests through a special purpose vehicle or a specialized entity or structure, that the profit that's created will be able to be used as additional income in the future to be able to boost up serviceability. So once we've done that a couple of times in this third phase of the Hopkins formula being development, then we're actually in a position where, we could potentially replace our income or substitute, someone in the family's working income, because we create an extra 100, 150K of income, per year now through development. So really that's exactly what I did to replace my income after 5 years. And that is now exactly what we teach our clients, the exact same process. People get it because it makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, done are the days where, companies just tell you to buy 10 properties in 10 years and you'll be financially free. Yeah, of course, if people could do that, it'd work. But we know what banks have been like for the last few years, very strict. So we need to be a lot more creative, and we need to be a lot more outside the box and forward thinking to ensure that we aren't going to be stopped in terms of our ability to borrow money. We want to ensure that we can continue to borrow money to be able to get to our goal. And we're very confident that people should be able to get there if they follow this process in a 10-year period. And that's our commitment to our clients.
So, has there been clients who have managed to achieve that within a shorter period of time?
The A-team itself has only been, we've only been rolling out the Hopkins formula as an official kind of process for, what would it be, maybe 15 months or so under this formula. We were still doing other parts of it, just it wasn't as structured as it is. But look, some people might come in and they've already got their 4 or 5 properties in their foundation. They might just need one more, high yielding property or something like that to complete it. Some people might roll straight into property development because they're at that level, and they only need to complete a couple of projects with us over a 3 to 4 year period max, and they've been able to replace or create an extra $200,000 of income. It just depends on where everyone's at. There is a reason why it's split into 3 phases, because it is imperative that people starting out understand all of the little one percenters involved in property investing. Sure, doing a development sounds exciting and it's sexy. However, if you don't understand, the finance process, if you've never, settled on a property before, if you don't understand all of the elements of, property management, being a landlord, depreciation and maximizing your tax returns, and there's so much that people need to learn. They are doing themselves a disadvantage if they're trying to jump the gun. And in addition, the other reason why we want to lay the foundation is if we do move into something a little bit, what would be perceived as a little bit more risky, and it went wrong, you don't want to lose everything. You want to still have a backbone or that foundation to fall back on. You want to ensure that you're always going to be protected, and that's why we design it in the way that we do. because people would be protected through completing that 3-step process.
In terms of locations where he prefers to implement this strategy, Hopkins has diversified over Melbourne and Brisbane, among other states.
Over the past, 18 months, we've been doing very, very moderate, only maybe once or twice in New South Wales, so I wouldn't even really mention that. But, Melbourne and Brisbane has been the predominant. So we've had a lot of clients that have done very well, made between 100 to 200K of equity in Melbourne over the past 18 odd months. And a lot of those clients, we're now getting into Brisbane. I've purchased, my last 4 have been in Brisbane because I'm a big believer that market has to follow suit, as Sydney as what Sydney and Melbourne have done. And there's a lot of great drivers and, I guess reasons as to why that's going to happen. So I'm really confident in Brisbane, and that whole southeast Queensland market it's been sort of heating up for a while, but it's time to hit the boil and do what Sydney and Melbourne have done. So I'm looking forward to that. I guess in the future I'd probably look at Perth. Maybe I might look at it in 6 months. We'll see. But that'd probably be the next horizon of a city that I'd look at.
It's clear he has come a long way within a 10-year period.
Firstly, I would never believe it if I said that, just rocking up in Melbourne, that you're going to be, you're going to have over a $10 million property portfolio and, have 3, fast-growing businesses. One that made the Australian Financial Review fast starters. I would never have imagined that, I'd be employing 12 staff and have, a couple of business partners and all that sort of stuff. No, there's no chance I would have believed it.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So I guess it'd be a surprise for him to actually find out in 10 years' time this is where you're at.
Yeah, I'd laugh.
Now, he is excited about fine-tuning his processes in all areas of his life, such as with his family and growing his businesses.
The situation I'm at with my personal investing now is, I know it's probably going to sound a little bit wankish, but I seem to find what I'm doing, it's nearly because I've put in the hard work now, and really I'm now starting to reap the fruits of my labour, if that's what the term is. I don't even know, but reap the rewards. Don't know where I was going with that, but I find it now nearly effortless to be able to produce insane profit. So I only do developing now because that's just the level that I'm at, and I don't look at a development unless it's going to produce me a 500k profit in that 12 to 18 month time frame. And I've done 4 of those this year alone. It's like, well, if that's just going to keep happening, I could just stop the 18 and keep doing that if I really wanted to, and I'd be in a really good position. But I suppose, it's exciting to see over the next 5 years where my property portfolio will be. I do also really like business, and I'm wanting to grow the 3 current companies to a pretty cool level. So I guess it'd just be awesome to see how far I can go. That's one of my drivers. That's a little bit of ego, I guess, wanting to push yourself and see what you can become. Sometimes, it has the opposite effect of wanting to take it easy and spend time with your family. I do get pulled in 2 directions a lot of the time. But I suppose the main thing for me would be to work out how can I satisfy my drive and my ambitions for success, whilst being the best dad I can be, the best husband I can be, growing a family and looking after my family. My mum works with me, my sister, my dad. He's one of my mentors, and I employ my best mate from high school, who's a godfather of my daughter. So, it's just, I guess, looking after those close people and seeing how many lives we can change in the next 5 years. Definitely like to get to 1,000 for sure.
If you'd like to connect with Hopkins to discover more on the Hopkins formula or find out more about the A-Team or other businesses that can help you with your journey, you can do so online or by giving them a call.
The best way to connect with us would be either jumping on the website, www.the18propertygroup.com.au, or giving us a call, 1300 283 267. In terms of the services that we offer, so make it really clear, we are very selective with who we work with. We're not a massive, we have thousands of clients, but they've only ever bought one property type of company. We're more of what we'd call, a boutique sort of company. Of course, we'd like to grow to a larger size, but maintaining the right people and results is very big for us. So, I guess for the people that are, 100%, 110% committed to wanting to change their life, through property, the service that we offer is we conduct initial one-on-one consultations where we really break down each person's situation, uncover a lot of time what their pain points are that they might not really know that are obvious, and where is it they really want to get to. And we help them create and tailor a 10-year plan. So we've actually got a piece of software that integrates with the Hopkins formula, the 3-step process. So we can look at every single person's situation, where they are as of today, income, assets, liabilities, input that into our template, and that can literally spit out, based on the Hopkins formula, where they would be in 10 years' time, how much wealth they're creating each year, what is their wealth position in 10 years' time, based on us taking them through our process. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you to Sasha Hopkins, our guest on this episode of Property Investory. If you want to hear more about his journey, then visit our website at propertyinvestory.com. Simply type in the search bar Sasha Hopkins and select that episode to learn more about his story.